Hey guys, welcome back to the Dewan Moore Show. I'm your host, Dewan Moore. Got one more news story for you before I head out the door to work. Make sure you hit that subscribe button because I'm trying to make this my day job, and the more subscribers I have, the more YouTube will consider I'm a real chill channel once I pass 1,000 subscribers. So if you haven't already, make sure you smash that subscribe button and let's jump into the news. Here's another news story from Vice, and this news story is climate change related, and it's by Geo Dimbricki. This woman going after big energy for the typhoon that killed her family. Can polluters be held legally responsible for the damage wrought by climate change? We may find soon. When Typhoon Haiyan made landfall on November 8th, 2013, Joanne Susintu wasn't all that worried. Tropical storms are common in the Philippines, but this one was different. Water surged to chest level in her family's house and forced her and her 6 relatives to evacuate. Outside, the water kept rising. Sutintu remembered feeling like she was inside a washing machine. The wind was cold as crushing ice. Waves swept over her older brother, sister-in-law, and nephew away. She saw her dad gasping for air. Currents kept dragging Sutintu underwater. Finally, she was able to grab a large piece of wood. She tried to pull her mom onto it, but realized it was too late. Her mom had drowned. Sutintu had to leave her mom's body to make it to safety. Quote, "No words can explain how I felt," the 25-year-old later recalled. Haiyan destroyed the city of Tacloban and many of the surrounding communities. It killed over 6,300 people, including Sintutu's mother, father, brother, sister, and nephew. She remembered crying her eyes out and screaming her heart out. Sintutu doesn't think it was a random tragedy. She blames climate change for intensifying the storm. And before I go any further, I want to apologize for the butchering of her name. I do apologize. These companies, Sutintu is convinced, are morally responsible for what happened to her family. She wants them held legally responsible as well. Quote, "The one myth that the big polluters have been feeding us, that climate change is everyone's fault," Sutintu told me in a Tacloban coffee shop that had been underwater during the typhoon. Quote, "We need to go directly to the people who started it. Most of the discourse around climate change has to do with either convincing people that it's real or talking about how to slow it down and mitigate its effects. But a Human Rights Commission in Philippines is trying to settle once and for all the issue of blame. It will be holding public hearings in the US, Europe, and Philippines this year to answer a potentially explosive question. Should the 47, quote, carbon majors, the biggest investors-owned greenhouse gas emitters in the world, be held accountable for fatalities and destruction linked to their business model? Here are some of the evidence the Commission may consider. These companies, which include top producers of oil, gas, and coal, petrochemicals, and cement, are responsible for almost a quarter of all greenhouse gases emitted since 1751. An Exxon scientist warned the company back in 1991 that climate change could cause effects which would indeed be catastrophic, at least for a substantial fraction of the Earth's population. Exxon, Chevron, BP, Shell, Peabody Energy, and other fossil fuel producers spent years denying that global warming was real, and the industry to this day pressures Republican politicians in the US to reject this science. Quote, "As the research shows, they already knew that climate risk of their business model, but they didn't do anything about it," Sutintu said. The Philippine Commission of Human Rights is not a court. It can't make legal rulings, All it can do is provide an opinion whether these 47 corporations committed human rights abuse and map a path to justice for the victims. Yet several of the companies have tried to shut the investigation down. We have made various legal challenges to the Commission's activity, as Representative of the Kanoa Phillips acknowledged in 2016. But the Commission on Human Rights is not backing down. We are determined to proceed, Commissioner Roberto Candiz explained to me last December in Quincy City at the investigation opening. Legal observers in Europe and the U.S. are watching closely. Some believe that this case has the potential to transform our understanding of climate change from a distant science threat, for which we are all partially responsible, to deadly chaos accelerated by 47 corporations. Quote, lawyers learn from each other. John Knox, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and the Environment, told me, quote, if the Philippines Commission on Human Rights is able to make a persuasive case, then you would expect to see those arguments appear in other form. For companies like Exxon, Chevron, Shell, and BP, it increases the risk of lawsuits and regulations that could cost them trillions of dollars. The story of this investigation begins on the first day of 2013 United Nations climate talk in Warsaw, when Yip Sino, the diplomat heading the Philippines delegation, stood up to deliver a speech to more than 1,000 delegates from around the world. 3 days earlier, Typhoon Haiyan, one of the strongest tropical storms ever recorded, had made landfall. It destroyed almost 300,000 homes and left nearly 2 million Filipinos homeless. Sino's father grew up in Tacloban, the city hit hardest. Family members still live there, and Sino spent hours after excruciating hours waiting to hear if his brother and other relatives survived. He eventually got news that his brother was safe, but on the opening day of Warsaw negotiations, Sino was set unsure about the others. Filipino President Benigno Aquino III has told Sino delegations to show a picture of strength to calm fears. Yet as he addresses the UN delegates, he felt overcome by emotion. Quote, I choose another path, he told me. Sino knew that back in Tacloban, his brother was pulling dead bodies from the wreckage, while tens of thousands of newly homeless Haiyan survivors struggled to find food and water. Quote, I had a choice to follow diplomats are supposed to do and be unemotional and impersonal and thank the world for their sympathy, Sino recalls. He began to weep. What my country is going through as a result of this extreme climate event is madness, Sino told the conference. He said he stopped eating food until the talks produced meaningful progress. We can stop this madness, he said, Sino wiping away tears. He received a standing ovation. Videos of the speech have been viewed more than 1 million times. His tears have communicated something that decades of high-level bureaucrat meeting and scientific report could not. Real lives at stake, he said. Climate change is not just words and numbers and figures. Sino resigned from his diplomatic position and got hired as head of Greenpeace East Asia. He didn't see the suffering his family and countless other Filipinos endured during Typhoon Haiyan as an unexplained disaster. Not only could it be explained, Sino, he believes that it could be ultimately be tracked back to the fossil fuel business model. Greenpeace and other civil social groups presented their argument in 2015 petition in the Commission of Human Rights. They pointed to a calculation from the climate researchers Richard Hitty showing Exxon, Chevron, Coconut Phillips, Shell, BP, and several dozen other carbon majors are responsible for 22% of all human carbon emissions, and they cited science linking those emissions to crop failures, rising seas, ocean acidification, and disasters like Haiyan. Quote, climate change interferes with the enjoyment of our fundamental rights as human beings, unquote, the petition reads. Hence, we demand accountability of those contributing to it. The Commission on Human Rights reviewed the petition and agreed to hold an inquiry. In doing so, it was making history. This kind of case has been filed before other national human rights institutions, but they all rejected it. Commission Candace explained, but we said, all right, we will be willing to be the first. Reactions from the companies under investigation were varied. Many ignored a request in 2016 to provide input. Some listed their investment in clean technologies, and others, including ConocoPhillips, which made several legal challenges to the Commission's jurisdiction, effectively tried to shut the investigation down. In the case of Narrow Sense, the carbon majors have little to worry about. They're being investigated by an underfunded commission with no binding legal power. But moral questions loom as large as legal ones. Society has not yet reached a consensus on who is responsible for climate change. Do we blame the companies that dig up fossil fuels, the utilities that burn them to make electricity, the people who pump them into their cars? These are recent, really difficult questions. Difficult in the sense that you don't have a right answer, said Bennett, mayor and assistant professor of law at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, who writes extensively on climate change. But the Philippine investigation is rejecting ambiguity. Myers thinks it can give a very strong signal about who is morally at fault for global warming, and provides a grim reminder of the human lives at stake. I know that was a long one, guys. Thank you for sitting through that read. I do appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, make sure you smash that like button. If you sat through all that, then you absolutely must have liked the video. So don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It means a lot in the YouTube analytics, believe me. Don't forget to subscribe, help the channel grow so that we can become a real YouTube channel and I can do more and put out more interesting news stories. I will see you guys a little bit later after I get off work. I'll try and get another one up. Until then, this is another news story from the Dewan Moore Show. I'm your host, Dewan Moore, and I will see you later today. Remember, be safe out there and have a great day.